So I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everybody joining us today in person. Welcome to Mengersen, welcome to Brisbane and the ASTN supported Women in Sportstech panel. So I'm delighted to be sharing this panel with an absolutely stellar cast, and they represent a diversity of people in roles that are really key to helping our sports tech ecosystem thrive. And I wanted to just find out from the audience as well, where are you from? So can I get a bit of a hands up? Who's from sports? Fantastic. From tech? Fantastic. From, let's see, research? Great. From academia? From government? Excellent. Who's wearing multiple hats? Yes, fantastic. And what about investment? Excellent. Now, do we have any entrepreneurs in the audience as well? Innovators? Okay, really diverse audience. That's fantastic. So welcome along. You are all key to the sports tech ecosystem. And I wanted to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from which we're meeting and sharing a yarn today and a bit of visual storytelling. And they are the Yugara and Turrbal people. And I want to also acknowledge the incredible contribution to sports and innovation that our First Nations people have made. So in terms of the panel lineup, well, this event wouldn't be happening today without, I'll go from right to left, but yes, Martin Schlegel. Dr. Martin Schlegel is the Executive Chair of the Australian Sports Technology Network, which is helping to accelerate sports tech innovation in Australia. And that's incredibly important, obviously, in this really exciting green and gold runway to 2032. We're a top 6 region globally, and there's an opportunity to build on that. And I think what the ASTN is also seen as well is the great opportunity to embrace the diverse talent within Australia, and that includes having more women in more roles in sports tech. Now, speaking about these different roles, the women on this panel represent a multiplicity of the roles and some of the industries that you're all from and some of the hats that you wear. But we have Louise, and Louise is from the Advisory Board Centre, and she can tell us about her remarkable journey into sports tech and the role of the Advisory Board Centre. We have Distinguished Professor Kerrie Mengersen, and Kerrie is a Distinguished Professor, which I think is even better than a professor and quite rare. So she's a representative from STEM, from research, and also a founder. I guess all the women are founders in their unique ways, and how STEM is relevant to sports tech. And then we have an athlete, entrepreneur, business owner who's doing very exciting things, and that's Stephanie. So can I encourage you all to give a warm welcome to our amazing panellists. Really excited to be sharing this panel with you and unlocking the insights from them about how they got here and the opportunities for women in sports tech. Because I think we all know that at this time in Australia's history, we are ready to, really celebrate women in sport. The Matildas was, I think the perfect example of a nation getting behind our female talent. And I think if you're looking to accelerate an ecosystem, you need to be embracing all talent. So how do we get more women, to come into sports tech? We are behind you as a nation. The sports tech industry wants to welcome you. And so let's get started. Okay, so first of all, I think we need to start with what is sports tech? And I think, Martin, over to you because you're the expert in unpacking that. What is sports tech? How did you get here? And how diverse is this amazing industry sector?
Thanks, Angela. And it's kind of interesting. All of a sudden, all eyes turn here to say, what is sports tech? But maybe to give you an idea of my own journey. And many of you have probably seen this. I've talked about what we now classify as sports tech many times. But my journey came out of the advanced materials. So I'm a chemist. I'm a chemical engineer by background. And even though I used to really love the round ball football when I grew up in Germany, it was never good enough to be actually somewhere of a player or worth mentioning somewhere. But I then we mentioned somewhere. But what happened was actually is something that I think a lot of people see in their journey, that you come to certain points of intersections and certain worlds collide. And in my case, it just like that I had done work in chemical engineering, and a company in the US had hunted me and said, oh, we want to upgrade our processes. And I was like, no, that's something that I can do. And then it turned out that was the largest company in North America that were actually building stadiums, and they were doing all of these materials that you need for your 400-meter running tracks, for your gymnasium floors, for weightlifting floors and things like that. And that was the starting point. And obviously, I had an interest in sport. But it's one of these things where when you ever probably come around that, oh, I didn't know that there's somebody who does that. And then it dawns on you, yeah, there needs to be somebody that does that. And so that's how I entered sports or sports technology at that point of time through the advanced materials section. And then fast forward and through working in the US, working in Asia, Shanghai, Hong Kong, coming to Australia, I realized that as a country, Australia has a competitive advantage, and that sits in sport. And the company I was running here was effectively doing the same. We were supplying materials to major events like the Beijing Olympics, the London Olympics, and things like that. And when I was asked, well, why should we even listen to someone from all the way on the other side of the world coming here to Europe or North America? I said, well, there's a simple answer. Australians are good at sport because if you take the medal tally, for instance, and obviously that's the scientific approach to it, if you normalize it based on population, we're, as a country, really outperforming in terms of, and the slogan obviously punching above its weight as a country, sort of like I saw that firsthand. And people actually stopped and said, well, we need to talk to you. We need to understand what you guys are doing down there. And that came through these thoughts about what is sports technology. And then for fast forward, getting to know the ASTN and having lived that experience of turning a company that was originally focused on domestic sales, and by the time I left, it was 65% of the sales were actually done through export, generated through export. James Demetrio, the founder of the ASTN, said, Martin, you got to tell the story. How did you actually open up those markets? How did you tap into distribution networks globally and things like that? And that's where we then started to define what is sports technology, which is now in 4 major areas. Sensors and devices, in addition to advanced materials, the medical side of things, and everybody that's in high performance sports will agree that doctors and physiotherapists that are supporting the teams, they use methodologies that come out of that area, applied to sport, and then obviously the large area of ICT. And that's now where we see the biggest growth, actually.
Fantastic. So if I'm to unpack a bit of that, you don't need to be born in Australia. And in fact, many of our great entrepreneurs here in Australia and contributors to our business system and industry, we're not necessarily born here. You don't need to have come from sports tech to add value. And in fact, the global perspective is really of value. And if we look up at what is sports tech, it's an opportunity-rich area for so many different people with diverse backgrounds to come and contribute to. So, yeah, not just STEM, not just sport, but obviously they're key, not just business, not just health. So that's exciting. I think it's a huge net that we can cast for more people to come into Sportstech. So thank you, Martin. That's great.
There's probably one story I'd like to share. So obviously we were supplying surfaces, and now you can imagine the German-born naturalised Australian at the English cricket board talking about cricket wickets, and they wanted to know how that worked. And the night before, I called one of our customers and I said, I need a crash course of cricket. He said, oh, my cricket ability is not that great. So I go into this meeting and I get asked the questions like, well, what are you doing? And our surfaces were at that time at the MCG and other test areas. And I was thrown these questions with cricket, which I had no idea what these actually were. And I said, well, you probably understand that I can't give away the country's secrets, but I can talk about the materials.
Oh, nice. Okay, fantastic. And I mean, I personally can attest to, you know, having come to Sportstech without necessarily knowing all the rules of all the sports. So yeah, if anyone else finds themselves in that position, obviously we don't want that to let you hold you back, because what would we be doing without, you know, someone of Martin's caliber contributing? So thank you, Martin. Right, this brings us to, I think, another interesting slide, and let's talk some statistics. So where are we in terms of some female founders in different industries? I think, Martin, you can help us unpack this as well, because, you know, what's important on this to the sports tech industry in particular, sports tech sector?
Yeah, now you've really thrown me on the bus, because we were going to talk about this a little bit later. But and maybe that's a thing that the others can help to really shine a light on. And this is stats from Startup Victoria, taken in 2020, and it shows that sport obviously has a low percentage of female founders in its makeup. And there's other industries like social enterprise, design, real estate, where there is a much higher rate of female founders, women founders realizing their dreams. And so the idea behind this was, which I think each of my co-panelists here can probably attest to, is can we attract talent from other sectors into sports by identifying what sport needs beyond on the field technology. And sort of like, and that's why I like this slide, because it sort of like also reflects how I got into the industry, through thinking about what have I learned that I could apply.
So there's a lot of generalizable you know, skills, and yes, okay, so these are some good points. And on the next slide, what do we have coming up? I think now it's time to introduce Stephanie, and I'd like to ask Stephanie to tell us her athlete journey, because I think athletes are a great resource within our sports tech industry, because you live the world of sports, you have that unique lived experience and many wonderful attributes of an athlete. So how did you become an entrepreneur? What's your intro into sports tech, with reference to this deck, if you like?
Well, I was a swimmer for over 20 years in Germany. For the clean side, I have to say back in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
And after the 88 Olympics, I came to Australia because I love the beach, I love water, obviously. Swimming over 80,000 kilometres, the Black Line, I needed to be close to water.
Wow.
I grew up in a family business, so we had a nursery and a flower shop for 125 years in the family in Germany. So I don't know how to be an employee, and that's the fault of my parents, I would say. For me, entrepreneurship was always a thing, because whilst I hate being in my not comfortable zone, but I love to be in there in the same way.
Okay.
So for me, is after swimming and after sports, because what they call now ADHD, I truly believe that's what I had, because that's what my mom put me in sport, because I was just too uncontrollable, I would say. So sports made me tired and, become normal as well. So after all this, I started to ride motorcycles. And because there are two parts of an athlete. Is either you continue for the rest of your life, like let's say Susie O'Neill, she still trains 4 times a week in the water. I could not even think of anything worse than that, to go in there. So I needed to be in something that I was not familiar, that really took me very quickly outside my comfort zone. And so riding a motorcycle, I always felt very uncomfortable with the protective gear that I had. But I thought that was more my problem, because I'm tall, I'm broad, I always have problems finding clothes that fit me for various reasons. And so I thought this was just mine. So in 2019, I rode with 12 other women the Simpson Desert with our dirt bikes to raise funds for Dolly Streams. And doing those 4 days and going over 1,200 sand dunes, I realized that by watching the other girls, that they had the same problem that I had. And the smallest was 5'1" and the tallest was 6'1". And so because English is my second language, I couldn't articulate at the time what was going on in my head. And I knew there was something. So on the end of the ride, I said to my then boyfriend, I'm going to create body armor for females, because my mom taught me from a very early age, don't wait for a leader to lead you. If you don't have one, become one yourself. And so I said, I'm going to make body armor. And my now husband, back then boyfriend, said, how? And I said, I have no freaking idea. But that's just a small problem as such. So I dived into a massive rabbit hole, and I've learned so much. So we started off as Miss MXG because I ride motocross, and I thought this was just for motocross. But over those 12 months of research, I found that the problem that females have with protective gear was shared amongst thousands of different sporting modalities, horse riding, martial arts, mountain biking. So it's not just an object, or like the impact can be from a moving object or me falling, or with a stationary object, and we don't do anything about it. So, and manufacturers up till now, obviously, they take a male design body armor and they're shrinking it and pinking it and making it okay for females. And I don't think it's acceptable anymore. And the risk in particular of females is impact injury to her chest may lead to breast cancer down the track. I don't want my daughter to play something, and because swimming for me, like people say swimming is a safe sport, in a sense it is, but I still had 6 concussions in my time because I forgot there was a wall.
I think you've identified maybe a second problem for your next business.
I've been asked for some reason lately about headgear, but I never say no to things. I'm just saying not yet. So we're concentrating on what we do now, and so our journey. COVID was the best time for me because I had a day spa for 20 years, and I couldn't operate. So Fempro Armour was not anymore a night project, it was then a full-time project. So over 2 years, I pretty much slept about 4 hours a day. And because I don't have an on and off, like I don't have an in-between, it's either full on or full off.
Right.
And yes, and then we relaunched into Fempro Armour because obviously we knew that there was so much more to go into. And that's where we're at.
Fantastic. What an exciting journey. And thank goodness for you jumping into this space, because I think a round of applause is warranted for this work. And Steph, what it shows, if I'm unpacking what you've done, is that a lot of energy can be, well harnessed to achieve great things in sports and beyond sports. And if anyone out there is participating in a sport and you're female, hands up. Great, okay. And perhaps you've encountered a problem that is specific to females that, look, just as a guy, you wouldn't understand, you wouldn't identify. And I think what you did, Steph, is beyond your personal experience, you also found that others shared that problem. So that's very important on the entrepreneurial journey, is it's not just a problem held by you, but by others. So
It's amazing the amount of messages that I have received over the 3 years since I said I'm going to make this, of women approaching us saying, these are the problems that I have. This is uncomfortable. I mean, even yesterday at the expo, like I've never thought about making a body armor for our private parts. But in martial arts, it's a big thing on the injury that this lady was telling me about. So there is just so much that women have not had the opportunities to be protected properly, because everything's, and I get it, manufacturing for females is a hard thing, because you can have 100 females with the same breast size, but 100 different body shapes. So it is financially really hard to create something for females than for males, because there's no female really, or a very small amount of females that fit into that box. Where with guys, it's 85% fit in one box, so you can create one thing, but you can't do that for females. And and that's where the biggest challenge was. So for us, it was finding the right materials that can fit to every single woman without making 1,000 different shapes and forms.
That's a very interesting question. And since we've got a couple of people on the panel as well that come from, materials and advisory, I think we'll unpack that a bit more later in terms of how you navigated that challenge to lead you to the success that you can share with us in more detail later. So thanks, Steph. And I guess who is the lucky person to be introduced next? Okay, so I'd like to warmly welcome Louise as well. And I think in anyone's journey through business, from an entrepreneur starting out and not necessarily knowing all the answers, advisors come into play. Now, Louise, can you share your journey and then how you jumped into Sportstech and how the advisory centre is relevant to Sportstech as well?
Yeah, thank you. It's been fascinating. I'm learning a lot here today, so it's great to be here. I'm actually not from the sports industry or the tech sector, so I'm a bit of an imposter sitting here today. I'm a business person, and I'm curious. And I guess that's what set me up in business. So I came from a corporate background. Had my first business when I was 19, then went into corporate, then went back into my own business, and developed a software technology for previous business was around outsourced HR. So it was like the zero for HR at the time. That was back in 2004 when we still had the CDs. We ended up with thousands of businesses using that software, but right in the beginning. And so I misjudged the way to go to market. So I had to sell everything that I had to keep that business going. And a year later, we had the opportunity to really grow that business. And I thought I want to be confident in the decisions that I was making, but it wasn't. And I thought that's just not good enough for a business that had opportunity for international markets. I thought I need good people around me who are independent of me to really help me road test my thinking. So then I made an advisory board. Didn't really know what one was, and I just made it up. And so anyway, and I did it, and it changed my life. We built that business to 135 offices in 8 countries in a 5-year period. And then I sold that business, and I was very grateful for what it did for me. I was very tired too. But I decided, because I come from the intellectual property and research and development background, which is why I've always had a pen in my hand. And so I thought, if that can do that for me, what can it do for other people, other entrepreneurs? And so I decided to invest 5 years to research, test and validate advisory board structures around, and found there was no professional body looking after the sector at all. So 6.5 years ago, we decided to build the world's only best professional body for the advisory board sector, which is a really important part of our community as well. So we are leading best practice and ethics in the way that advisors are engaged for businesses, for startups, scale-ups, the mid-market, and also corporate environments. So we're still the only professional body in the world, and we operate now in over 25 countries, proudly Brisbane-based. And many of those businesses are female entrepreneurs and also in the sports and sports tech sector, which is really great to see. We did a bit of study. I'm a propeller head, right? So we do the research and development. And so we were really concerned about some of the information we were seeing around female founder benchmarking versus mid-market. And we put that to Austrade as well as the Queensland government. They helped fund some research that we did around female founders and the barriers to scale. So that's a really well-known reporting market around the barriers to scale for female founders. Just on the sports side, in a few weeks' time, we're releasing an interview that I did last week with the founder of Skatistan. I'm not sure if you would have heard about them. Ollie is the founder, but they teach girls, started in Afghanistan, to skate because it wasn't prohibited because it was a new sport. They now operate 250 countries. So it's really interesting how sport is really enabling girls to be empowered for this in the future. So I'm very excited about being here today. So the world of the advisory board sector needs to really support the sports tech sector as well as female founders. So whatever we can do to support this sector, I'm all in.
Thank you, Louise. And another round of applause, I think, as well, because that's a fantastic journey. And I love that, curiosity is something, that if you hold that curiosity and, as you said, you don't know all the answers when you're embarking on your journey, but have confidence and curiosity and look at the amazing, things that you can accomplish as Louise and Steph have shown. And that's fantastic. We can get help, we can ask for help, and advisors are out there at all points in the journey. And I think we can unpack that a little bit further as to, when in the journey you might need help and what kind of help. And when we're talking about experts, it might be good to jump into who's on the next slide. Okay, and where people come from. So I guess when I think about sports tech, a little summary in my head is it's at its core, STEM times sport. So it's STEM in particular, those kinds of technologies, knowledge that's applied to sports, the problems, the opportunities to create new value. And that's where you see the entrepreneurs starting businesses. That's when you see new innovations, as Martin has shown. And then we get support from advisors along our journey to, build products, to build products overcoming some technical challenges, to apply knowledge, and to start, grow businesses and take them internationally, which is a wonderful story of the organisation born in Afghanistan and how sports can be such an enabler. It's really incredible, actually. I didn't realise just the value of sport beyond, our health, our well-being, the social side. So it's really wonderful. It is such an enabler. And then in terms of enablers, I think looking at STEM, and Martin, your ASTN report did identify some key technologies in the technology stack that are relevant to sports tech. And I think in your top trends as well, a key technology area, an enabling area, is obviously the ICT, information communication technologies, and a top one we're all familiar with, AI, and that's within the broad category of data sciences. And so our next panellist, Distinguished Professor Kerrie Mengersen, is the Director of the Centre for Data Science, and also that is the leader of the Australian Data Science Network, and Kerrie is a co-founder of that. So yes, you're all doing entrepreneurial things in the industry and for the industry. So Kerrie, tell us about your journey that led to sports tech, particularly because going back to Martin's slide, I think we saw that right at the bottom of the slide, where are the fewest females participating currently? So where's the biggest opportunity? And that's females in those data science areas, and also females as founders in Sportstech, which you're addressing, we're all addressing. Okay, so Kerrie, over to you. How did you get here, and how is STEM relevant in your data sciences, and what are you doing?
Thanks, Angela. I'm a professor of statistics at QUT, and statistics is one of those subjects. It's around data, and sort of 30 years ago, I guess, it's something that you just wouldn't admit. That you would be a statistician, you were something else, and you go, but now really it's a matter of coming out. And I think that now, because it's like, I'm not a statistician, hello, statistician.
Welcome.
But what it means is that over the time, we've seen the real rise of data, and we've seen the rise of data that influences all of our lives. And we see all kinds of different types of data as well. So it's not just the stock standard surveys, and in sport, it's not just the stats given for a game. It now relates to wearables, it relates to all kinds of sensors, it relates to video, computer vision, it relates to satellite data even. There's all sorts of data that can be used to gain insights into pretty much every area of our economy, of our society, of our health and welfare, of our environment. And so for me, that's the area that has this huge opportunity now, where we can try to gain insights, to sort of suck out the knowledge from the data. What is the data trying to tell us? To break it open and to find out what it's telling us in these different areas. So what we can do also in this time is starting with the sort of traditional statistical analysis, but now combining it with machine learning, combining it with information systems, looking at information flows, combining it also with the AI and learning, using data as a learning system. We really have this great opportunity to grow the tech, if you like, the data tech, adding the smarts to data, with also the sports tech. And sports becomes this, in and of itself, a really important area that can utilize data, but it's also a vehicle for developing methods and the tools that can then be applied to a whole range of other areas as well. And so for me, the excitement in not only developing those tools and utilizing them in sport, but also giving other people the power to use data to derive their own insights. And in sport, then, that's around, individual athletes owning their data and understanding what the data is telling them, rather than having sort of received wisdom somewhere on high. Giving sports entrepreneurs and startups and corporates the ability to take the data that they are generating and to use it to expand their businesses in this area. And we see that now, like sports analytics is one of the areas that's really growing enormously across the world. There's 4 times the growth in the last 2 years in this area in Australia, and internationally that's about 10 times the growth that we're seeing. This just enormous increase in growth. It's billions of dollars of industry of opportunity that's in the sports and analytics area. So how does Australia, which still has a really small industry, if you like, or a small activity in the sports analytics area, how does it grow to sort of capitalise on that opportunity that we see globally? And that's where we can sort of build up our data science AI capability in sport. So what we'd like to do is we started talking to our partners, the Australian Institute of Sport.
So you've got a really long connection with sport.
Yeah, that's right. We've got lots of partners in sport, and we were talking to them about the kinds of challenges of analysing their data and also gaining insights from this, and a lot of common themes across those areas. And we thought, well, why don't we start to think about the Australian sports data science and AI, the community, if you like, or the environment, and how we might grow that, and especially as we see the trajectory to 2032. So we're on board, we're here, and we want to grow this both for Australia and also for sport.
Fantastic, Kerrie. And I love that you're empowering people to, use their data and as an ecosystem, empowering the ecosystem as well to harness the expertise within the data science, connect it with our wonderful sports industry, Martin, you said, is a competitive advantage for Australia. And then with the aim of realising enduring legacy for 2032 that goes beyond 2032. So if we can connect our STEM expertise and other expertise with our sports industry, we have the potential to have an enormous impact for Australia that goes well beyond 2032. And that's to help our athletes, our sporting organisations. And then looking at those icons, it's so much more. It's, empowering us personally with our health, our wealth, our well-being. All of us are interested in that. Even the non-athletes who just want to have a go. Thank you very much. I once raced against Kieran Prackens. He did not know we were racing. So, but it was great motivation for me and helped with my well-being and fitness. And he was just casually, warming up. But sport is for everyone, and data is created by everyone. And I think there's a great opportunity to benefit everyone. And these benefits include economic, social, cultural. Sport is also building relations between countries. And I think we even have a wonderful guest from Japan in the audience. And that speaks to, the wonderful opportunity to connect internationally for peace, for prosperity, for connecting to solve some of our pressing challenges environmentally as well. So that's really exciting, and I think we'll jump to the next slide, but it sounds like there's way more opportunity within the Sports Hub, and we can unpack that later.
And I just add one thing there. We've actually got a new discussion happening between the Austrian rowing team community and the Australian rowing community, because not too many people internationally know the difference between Austria and Australia. So we figured that this is a pretty good relationship to have. But you can see that this is just a discussion that's happening just right now. So it's an example of that sort of international opportunities that we have. And this is around the data science.
Fantastic. And I think we need to really think about, I think, Martin, you were saying, in Australia, we're a small country and it makes sense to focus on what we're really good at. But, Sportstech is small, but it's top 6 globally. And, the number of, people in STEM, if we multiply them by our sports advantage, that's a huge opportunity. But then joining forces, how can we join forces? So each of you are from different areas, but when we can come together, we can amplify those benefits. And Australia, Austria, fantastic. That's great. And on to the next slide. I wanted to go back to you, Steph, because, in terms of where you are in your journey, you were talking about identifying a problem. It's not just limited to you. Solving the technical challenges around, addressing impact for female bodies, which are very different in shape and size, and how do you turn that into a business? So I think this is a nice opportunity. You don't have to have all the answers. Louise points to that. Steph, you did too. But right now, I think you're at the stage of, you're not just selling in Australia, and you're not just selling to the sport that you started in or that you're passionate about. Motorsport is more or motor racing, motocross is more of a passion. But what are you doing now? And then I think we'll jump over to how can the ecosystem help as an example.
Well, as I said, we started in motocross, and throughout the research, I found the same problem. And we're now in AFL and rugby, and I have no clue about the game. There's so many sports that I just don't understand, and I don't really have to understand them. I just need to be able to connect with the people that do. So currently we are in our third fitting with the AFL and rugby, Southport Sharks and the Bond University. And the girls are actually telling me what the problem is, what they're facing day in, day out, because females also have injuries different than males due to hormonal issues and how our bodies are designed compared to males. So, and for me, I have an advisory board because I truly believe I could not have gotten to the level in swimming without the support that I had through coaches, physios, doctors, parents, obviously. And I know that in business, I can't do it by myself. And you really shouldn't have to. So you get around people that know more than you so that you can suck the life out of them, so to speak, and learn as much as possible, because so you don't make those decisions. So I have been very blessed to be in the Ignite program, where we have an advisory panel that help us and then look at the problems differently. And then I'm at events just like this over the last few days, and you meet people that come from different sectors. And so a couple of years ago, I met people in the Defence Force. And so I started talking to them and learning about and because I'm a sponge to learn things. I want to know what is happening in people's lives. And it might not be relative at that moment. And so I went like, defense. My son, I have a 22-year-old son who's in the army, and I want him to be safe. So for me, it is really important that the people that look after us are as safe as possible. So defense, it's a labor of love, and it's literally a labor of 10 children, and it's really painful and very long to deal with in the defense. But you can see us in there now, and through the program that I attended last year, I then slid into the hospitals, and I went like, I don't know anything about this, and you just get in there and you just learn and connect, and so we are helping elderlies to not have fractures, because statistics shows that within 12 to 18 months, elderlies that had a fracture of their nostril, they had a femur, will die. And my grandma was one of those. She died within 4 days of her break. And so for me, it's not about sports. Yes, motocross is my passion, and being around athletes, because we do think a bit different at times. But it's all about protecting people. And for me, if I go to sleep tomorrow and never wake up, I know that I have been able to help people not to die. And I had numerous messages come where they said I should have died really, but I didn't because I wore your gear. And so for me, that is what keeps me driving, is just to help people. So I'm not in protection, I'm an insurance company really. If you want to get into an accident and say, I'm glad I had it on, instead I wish I had it on. And that's why we have house insurance and car insurance and all these kind of things. It's the insurance to be safer, because for me, I fall pretty much every week when I go riding, and it's not because I can't ride, it's just because of what we do. But I know I can fall safely, or the implication of that fall is minimal as much as possible, so that when Monday morning comes on, I know I can go back to work instead of being 6 weeks or 8 weeks or in a coma or in all sorts of things. I'm not saying you can't get hurt, because nothing makes you foolproof. I mean, the seatbelt, you still can die from that too.
But safer.
But you are more likely to be safe.
Congratulations. That's really A really incredible story, and I think you highlight a few points that we can all take from that. Your passion is evident, and the fact that each morning you get up knowing that you're making a difference, and you can personalize that to your family, solving problems beyond what you initially thought you were solving. And I think in terms of journey as an entrepreneur, you maybe don't know where you're going to end up, and that curiosity, that being open to listening to others on your journey, whether that's maybe starting out with your close circle, but then going on to others, and who else can you be creating value for? I think we can all ask that, especially, when, Martin, you think about going from one industry to another. You might find that you can create value from your product or your expertise in sports tech as well, and then even beyond sports tech. So how common is it, Martin, for people to jump from sports tech into other adjacent industries, like the one Steph was mentioning, defense, health?
That was a good example. So we're finding more that entrepreneurs in sports are validating. And there were a couple of things that I think are important here that you said about understanding the customer, because that's sort of like what we in our programs are trying to emphasize, understanding the market and understanding the customer, and in the truest sense, for those of you that are in startup land, that customer discovery. And that then can lead you to actually get into adjacent industries or see that you can translate something that you've seen in sport, because it's dealing with athletes with human ability, or with athletes of all abilities that then you can transfer to other areas. So we're seeing this more and more, and there's plenty of examples, like in Queensland, for instance, in addition to your business, Dahlke, who started out in strength and conditioning, but now are going into allied health.
Yes.
And so that is a viable path.
Great.
It's a different income stream.
Right, and that's important, isn't it?
We always get told in school to have multiple income streams.
Yes.
Like for me, sports will always be the passion. It's the highlight that makes me go, like my brain still thinks I'm 20.
Yes.
It's just the body is not saying that anymore.
Don't change.
So, like our armor doesn't change.
Yep.
It might change with the different sports, because sports have different needs, or the same like with defense and health. Like we've taken our hip armor from motorcycling to the elderlies.
Yep.
Because my bones are the same when I come off at 200k an hour and hit the wall than when an elderly falls off the chair.
Right.
So your product doesn't change, it's just the customer of where they're sitting change.
Sure, and slight adaptations. That makes sense. And I think...
Can I ask the question? Did the elderly know that they're wearing a motocross?
Yeah.
I don't know. And it's the beauty on our... Is it on? The beauty on ours is because elderlies don't want to wear anything that makes them look like they're losing control. I don't like it. I'm too stubborn for that anyway. So the products that we design for sports need to be really thin, but also have to have the ability to be impact tested, because it's not just a piece of foam like many other things. So if we can provide a product to elderlies that is pretty impossible to see. So when I had a meeting with the Gold Coast University Hospital, I sat in this boardroom with doctors and professors and head nurses, and they're really scary. And I had a video playing with my husband running with the dogs, and then he stopped and opened up his pants, and they all go like, oh, what's going on? But he had skinny jeans on. You could not see that he had that on, and pulled the hip armor out. And it's about, in particular, why do elderlies not wear a hearing aid, or they want to wear the buttons, is because then they are being perceived as they're losing control, they get old and all that kind of thing. So for us, it was taking the motorcycle into healthcare, gave them that, because I always say to my mom, don't let the environment dictate on how you live. Do it the other way around. And that's what I do. say that. But I've never asked that question, is actually.
Good question, Kerrie. And I want to talk about, because Steph, you've gone on a journey to, from athlete and appreciating the value of having a coach and being coachable to, launching a startup which addressed a problem, then seeing the opportunity in other areas. And I think I want to take it over to Louise in terms of, along that journey, where do you see the role of advisory? And then I think Martin as well. If we have a little sneak peek behind Louise, it's actually, I've taken this from your advisory board centre. There's a state of the market report. You mentioned doing research on trends, and I think this is a really interesting slide which talks about the informal to more formal engagement between, for example, entrepreneurs through to startup scale-ups. And I think ASTN, you play a part in this as well. But Louise, can you unpack that a little bit further about when might we benefit from an advisor? Who makes a good advisor? And maybe even, are athletes good because they've had coaches? How can we take advice? Because I think if we realise that we don't have to go it all alone, we don't have to have all the answers. There is a network out there of people, of programs, of places, just like we're here today at the wonderful precinct. We can feel that we're well supported, just like we're well protected when we wear your armour. Louise.
And I've got to say, Steph, the advisors that have been working with you through the Ignite program and Budget Woods, and they just love working. So it's great to see. And when you talk about the armour, you've got it in there in place so that someone could go faster and push the limits. And it's really interesting. That's sometimes what advisory boards are too. You have brakes in the car to enable you to go faster. That's right. Yeah. And so advisory boards, the sector itself has doubled in size in the last few years worldwide. So when we first started mapping the advisory board sector, there were 1.3 million advisory board professionals in the market. Now there's only 2.6 million, which is fantastic to see the growth of the advisory board sector, but it's problematic, because you're getting people entering advisory boards that actually don't know what they're doing and know where the ethical boundaries are. But there are so many different ways to access advice and advisory boards for different purposes. So, as you said, the informal level is family and friends who will give you advice whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
And then you get peers in business. When we go to Mackay and we set up advisory boards there, they say it's not peers in business, it's peers in business, right? Peer relationship. And then you get business networks. Like, this is such an important network, Martin, of what you have, where then you get that mutual support in networks. Yeah. Then you get that one-to-one engagement where you have someone who's a specialist, an accountant, a lawyer, or a business coach, consultant. But it gets problematic when you expect one person to have the answer to everything about your business. Right. So there's real ethical challenges when it's a one-to-one engagement. Advisory boards is generally when there's an independent chair or external advisors, and they meet 4 to 6 times a year. They measure the impact of that advisory board, and it's a problem-solving or decision-making model. And the most important level of advice is around governance, where it's binding, it's decision-making, it's binding on those directors. We can go to jail for the decisions that are made or not made. It's also binding the organisation to implement on those decisions. A lot of entrepreneurs want to scale their governance scale from advisory into governance over time, because they don't want to lose control of their decision-making. You work hard to build your asset, so you don't want to lose control. This is where advisory boards are really quite an interesting thing. I do want to talk, though, about this. When you've got an advisory board, you can have it overlooking with your all of business activity. But where the market is now today, there's a big evolution, and Martin, we would get your view on this. Over 53% of your advisory boards are project advisory boards. So it's not talking about everything. It's not talking about the strategy. It's talking about a strategy. So it could be about entering a new market, commercialisation of a new idea, but where the real growth is in the ESG and sustainability and customer advisory boards. So when you're talking about new market segmentation, like what you're talking about into the aged care sector have now just regulated advisory boards. They have to have advisory boards in the aged care market. So when you're thinking about using your technology into new markets, customer advisory boards are just a fantastic way to do it, because you're co-creating your product and service with your customer. And this week, Amazon and Salesforce have just absolutely led the way in the way that they've engaged their customer advisory boards. So when you look at a commercial and savvy way of using advisory boards in this sector, I think because there's so much application from the sports tech space into other markets, it's an enabling technology that you're in lots of different environments. I think these customer advisory boards, project advisory boards, is the way to go in the sector.
Yeah, that's actually very important, and we see this in our programs. So early on, it's probably the advice that entrepreneurs who've been there, done that, can pass on to startups. So we have sessions like we call Learn from the Best, where effectively founders who've been in those particular situations openly share their experiences, their mistakes, and do that in an open group setting. But as I think, and you were talking about that the requirements change along the journey of the startup. So whether you're early stage, growth stage, or you into export ready, the requirements will change. And that's where, what Louise, you were saying, that's where I need specialist advice that is specific to that point in time.
Well, the questions do change as you grow.
Well,
Or the hurdles and the problems will change. So you need different advice. Like when I started off on how to make body armor and I was talking to my families, they gave me, this might be and that might be, where now, because we're talking about US and Asia export, and we're already selling in those markets, but that's through our direct customers, but I'm talking about exporting properly, thousands of those things over there. The questions that I have to overcome is now different contracts and different laws and packaging and all that. So, I find an advisory board is really great because when I have a slump, I send an email and go like, I have no idea what to do. Who do you know that can you help? And then it's, doesn't mean I have to do it the way they're saying it, but just having a team around you that can help you overcome those kind of things. It's the most important thing because it's not anymore what you do, it's who you know that can help you with that. And so I'm very grateful to have my own advisory board that I can lean on, but also have mentorships and being in organisation with like you guys.
Yeah, can I just talk about this? It's a risk management strategy. So being global is tricky. It's going to be tricky geopolitical environments. So when we're dealing with other jurisdictions, having people in that market, and not just one person, it's tricky having one person. We call it the power of three. You get optimal decision making when you have three independent sources, and research is very, very clear around that. So the power of three is really, and it's about, the other thing about the research that's in this report is around the confidence test. How do you make confident decisions? And there's three factors that are really important in making a confident decision. One is confidence in the advisor, not only their experience, but the intent of the advisor. So again, why are they providing that advice? So when there's conflicts of interest and discrepancy around trust, then that's an issue. So you've got to be confident in the advisor, you've got to be confident in the information, so the data, right? So how do you interpret that data? Is that the best data that we have in front of us to be able to make a good decision? And the third but most important one is your confidence in your ability to be able to execute. So a lot of advisors complain to me saying, I gave that advice and they should have taken it because it was the right advice. They're really missing the point because there's so much more going on. It's not just what you know, it's their ability to be able to make a confident decision on information they've got in front of them, and they've got to be able to execute. And so it's actually that value exchange is something that it's a very important thing, and it's complex. You've got to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we all bring different human capital, social capital, and financial capital, whether we're an individual, whether we're a startup, a business, an organization, an industry. And so having that network beyond us to help us navigate this increasingly complex external environment when you're thinking about changes in technologies, big issues like climate, sustainability, and having those trusted people and trusted data and that triangulation you're talking about. And I think, Steph, you beautifully illustrated with your startup journey, just the opportunity, if you have a look at the engagement model, from family and friends, we always think about, them giving us some support or maybe not always, but maybe also helping us with raising money, to the peers in business, and I think in the ASTN, it's a network of peers, isn't it, in the sports tech industry, and this week has been wonderful with Sport Tech Innovation Week in meeting so many peers. Then the network groups, again, the ASTN, the advisors. I come from a background as well, Louise, in IP, as working for some of our great lifestyle brands in sport, like the Billabongs, that really, capitalised on this country's, great investment and passion for sport, but amongst many other industries, and UFC trademarking the octagon, so protecting the valuable intellectual property. But, there's advisors out there, you need to find the right ones, and then, when you get to the right stage, making it more formal. And Martin, did you have something? No, but you're obviously doing a wonderful job as chair of the ASTN, and I have to give a shout out because I have to say, coming from the outside into the sports tech industry, so IP, innovation, entrepreneurship, and deep research, working with the likes of the great Kerrie. I've been so welcomed, and it's so wonderful to be on a board. I've just recently joined the ASTN board, and it's there's 2 female directors on that board, so diversity is key, and it's wonderful to be on it.
And Kerrie, you were pointing out something about, I think there's a parallel here, because from a STEM perspective, I think have similar problems that the sector has, trying to attract diverse input into the sector. Because if I look back at what I think there's a study from the Technical University of Munich at ECG, which says if I have diverse inputs, the outputs are actually going to be better. So I think, how are you managing to attract diverse talent into your sector from a STEM perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. There are parallels. I think STEM's a broad term. So if you're looking at physics, maybe chemistry, somewhat chemistry, but certainly physics, there's a problem with getting women in the door, and especially keeping women in those areas. When it comes to data, we actually have an opportunity, I think, because there's more there's a better gender balance in the area of data, and I think that's where we can really bring that to the table for sports and sport tech. And I think also that we have the opportunity to bring a broad range of people from different backgrounds into data and data sciences and statistics, to speak, or data analytics and AI. When we think about the computer science side of AI, then that's also has a gender imbalance. But if we think about people coming from like psychology and from health sciences and from other areas into focusing on data and the data analytics, then we can really build that better gender balance. And I was saying mathematics, the mathematics and statistics is pretty much nobody's at average. We have very diverse people in our field, so diversity is key. And I asked a question. I was really interested in the role of advisors. Do you see that there's a difference for women and for men in terms of advisory laws and receiving advice? Without saying,
But
I'm more of the I told you so. But it's still no, you don't see it. No. Okay, but I don't also.
So I think the future trends in sports tech do point to the great opportunity of unlocking more female talent, unlocking more talent from STEM, including the AI. That's one of the top 10 topics, but there are many more. So if you fit in any of those categories, we need you. We need you. This is the future. When we're thinking about what's disrupting sport, what's enabling, innovations and new startups and opportunities and helping, these are the top trends. So if you're not across them, there's advice out there that can be had from experts, from others in relation to these areas. So in terms of programs as well, I think it might be good to throw to you, Martin, in terms of Queensland in particular. What are the stats first of all, where are we in terms of startups relative to the nation, and what kind of startups are they, and why do we need some programs in here as well for women?
Yeah, so if I compare the state of Queensland, there's probably a larger proportion of what we classify as startups of early stage, like 1 to 10 employees. And the percentage of startups in Queensland that fit that startup small category is larger in the state. So I think there's an opportunity here to assist those groups and those companies. The other thing that we were mentioning about Advanced Queensland, when we identified that is a different makeup compared to the national setup, we then also suggested that an early stage program specifically for female founder could actually help to build that runway for here in the state of Queensland. So that's why from an ASTN perspective, we're running a dedicated program funded by Advanced Queensland at the moment.
Fantastic. So I understand that the eastern seaboard of Australia is where there's a massive concentration of sports tech talent, and that's come out of your survey. And so if Queensland has the highest percentage nationally of early stage, then let's help them get to the next level with the programs, with the peers, with the experts, with the advisors. So that's really exciting to see that happening. And of course, we need more programs. Do you need export programs? Is that where you're at, or where are you now?
It's not just the export, it's in general. There's not enough programs to cater. Martin, you said we had 12,000, what was the number of early startups?
So there's 760 companies in Australia in the Sportstech sector. And nationally, it's about 60% are classified as startups, meaning we classify on FTEs, full-time equivalents. So 1 to 10, we classify as a startup, 11 to 50 as an SME, and then above 50 as a large. And in Queensland, there's 64%, so higher than what's on the national average. Now, you can argue whether that's, I'm not a statistician, whether 60 to 64 is significant or not, but it also reflects on when we're going out and soliciting support for our programs in terms of who actually applies to the program. And here in Queensland, it was more on the early stage side.
So it's really important to have that big picture to know where to focus, the support, the energy.
Because otherwise, as we heard from Louise, if you the point or the advice that you provide is relevant to a point in time.
Yes.
And so therefore, if you don't rely that, you can give the wrong advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think acting as the industry ambassador, the ASTN is able to do that and target the programs. And you do, maybe it's also a point to say, in terms of global trade missions, because you acknowledge that if you were just focused on sports tech and you were just focused on Australia, you're missing out on a global market, global opportunities to really scale something and realize a great return on investment. And Steph, you're on that journey. You're in other countries. Martin, do you have something to share about, what are the top markets and, learnings from thinking globally and the need to do that and, some of your trade missions?
Yeah, so obviously for a sports tech company, the companies are always looking at North America Europe and the UK. And obviously, as Australia is located on a doorstep to Southeast Asia, that is of interest, but you'll find that some of those markets are not mature enough in terms of their ability to realize the full potential that comes from sports technology, because it needs that mature market. So I guess, and this goes back to then providing that advice, it doesn't say that that market is not a market for you if you identify that there is a particular customer in that market, but the trend is that that the companies in our sector are drawn to these big markets.
Perfect. So it's good to have those overall trends and then tweak it as you need if your particular product is different. All right. Now we are coming to nearly getting the question and answer, but I think I wanted to jump back to Kerrie with the Sports Data Science Hub, which is actually looking at a number of broad themes, and maybe, so we've got the performance, participation, wellbeing, you've got the business of sport, tech and infrastructure, and just the digital strategy and enablement as a core enabler. And that's, I guess, across all sports, sports tech, and allied industries. Can we jump to the next slide? Wanted to just ask about some female-led projects within that. So you've already started, there's, I think, 30 research projects building on, that's your latest wave of investment. So about 8 million in resources, and already kickstarting projects, and more to come, more announcements to come. I don't know that you've had the official launch, but I hear there's some very exciting talent coming back and bigger things. But tell us about the exciting female relevant projects like Splink. Who is Sue, Dr. Sue Robson, and why is it important to support female startups in a research hub?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, you're right. We have a large range of projects with our partners, and those partners range from the sports institutes and like Tennis Australia and Paddle Australia and the Australias, and also the Queensland and state versions of those, but also then the some of the corporates as well. And what we're finding is that again, it's focused on the data and the data insights. Some of those projects then, we have the opportunity to talk through like prediction, talent identification, best practice in business, even digital and data literacy and so on. So the whole range of different things people might want to find out from their data. Some of the partners are our female founders, and that's fantastic, and female-led organisations. Also large corporations that are female-led that are interested in being involved. But Splink is a great example of a startup that Sue Bolson has developed, and this is around the issue of women undertaking sport, and for example, their whole hormonal system, and how that might then impact on sport. So their performance, their particular needs during that whole journey through from early stages to late stages in their careers, and also then the sort of the monthly cycles that they go through and how that might impact on their performance and injury and well-being. And so that's exciting because that's a data problem.
Fantastic. So using AI to better understand the female performance cycle, and not just picking it, shrinking it, and she'll be right, mate, and putting a tutu. Putting a tutu. So female performance cycle, understanding that. So menstruation, different, all manner of different pills, how that affects performance, injury. That's got to be massive for sport. So Sue's background, as I understand, she's come from ASTN, Smarter Base, formerly. So she was looking after product and technology, and then she's been in high performance and coaching and deep expertise in the human sciences. So she's obviously got a lot to contribute, and it's great to see research supporting that deeper dive so that her high-tech startup is, there's more and more knowledge and IP in that, and it's also shared across the industry. Martin?
And Andrew, this is a real-world implication. So
Yes.
we all know these wearables.
Yes.
And when I attended MIT's conference at Boston, I always thought that when you activate a wearable and you answer the question whether your gender is male or female, that actually takes into account what you get as a suggestion. And it doesn't. It's built on the same algorithms. So we're obviously introducing biases into things that are not relevant.
Yep. So it's a problem across, what women are given as equipment, assuming we're all the same, data, the data that goes into developing these algorithms. Kerrie, you would understand, the importance of not having garbage in or bias in, and then, the wrong things coming out. So there's massive opportunity.
Not representative groups in our communities, and we really need to change that. My story about that is my car, when I use the voice activation, it doesn't understand when I talk in my normal voice. I have to say, Paul. But if I say Paul Jared Davis, it goes like, you can give me 2 options, and it carries on like that. No, I'm going to just do a call. So I have to put on my man's voice.
So I think it's ripe for opportunity to address that, to get the best out of women in sport. And I personally, I want to be performing at my best in an adjacent industry as a desk, a desk demon, working efficiently. So if I can understand my performance cycle, that goes beyond sport as well. So that's fantastic. Now we're going to go through some of the slides quickly, but I see in the audience with the other project that you were just highlighting, I know there's many, but on the back slide was, I think, a shout out to one of the audience members who's finishing a PhD, Kate, and she's come from a sports science background, but developing the data science kiosk for sport. So again, back to your democratizing, the ability to use data, because I know that mathematicians can be scary. They can use scary symbols, and it frightens the rest of us. But I think it's, very empowering and a great opportunity to arm our sports scientists, to arm our industry in sports, with data enabled by the tools that you're creating. So, and good job, Kate, another female doing great things, coming from physio.
It says data armor.
Data armor, yeah.
Like, being in this field of sports tech, I'm very jealous of what athletes these days actually have.
Okay.
Back to my times, we ate crap. When we ate anything that you just gave us because we were so hungry.
Right.
We weren't talking about nutrition. The one thing that we did have was massages. And that's as far as our technology came to it. And the stuff that, I just, listening to you just before about the data, I wish I would have had data to analyze of what I was doing in order to change things. It was purely on how did it feel, kind of a way. So I'm very jealous, because I sort of quite often think, where would I have gotten to if I did have all that? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, they still have to do what needs to be done, but just the help that they give these days is just unbelievable.
Well, guess what? Because you're not that busy, have those few hours where you said you were sleepy. I figured that you could take advantage of this. Which is now we actually have an opportunity through the next generation graduates program to train 30-odd, there probably will be odd, PhD and master's students in sports data analytics. And this is going to be a great jumpstart. These are all co-funded with industry partners. We're looking for the next round of industry partners and students to pair up to add to this, and this will be a cohort then that will work together, but with these different areas of different projects with our different partners. So we are looking for anybody who's interested in learning about data and data analysis and AI and emerging technologies from any field. And so if you know any sports tragics out there, if you have any parents, any, friends, anybody who's interested in doing something in sports data analytics, bring them our way.
Thank you, Kerrie. Now, I think we're at the stage where we've explored so many different opportunities for females to get into the sports industry, the sports tech industry, to add value. Now, I want to see whether we have a little bit of time for some Q&A with the audience to hear your questions, your comments, and if we have any special guests from overseas as well, want to give a shout out and maybe, come on down and say hello. So how long do we have for questions? 10 minutes. Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, Monica. I think Monica of many hats, which is wonderful to see you in sports tech today.
I'm just interested in have you seen any discrimination in funding because you're a woman, either from a research perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, or in maybe how boards are either remunerated for advisory boards versus actually I would in a lot of businesses who are supporting them. It's kind of them as well. Not ask for any money to leave involved companies, whereas the happens on more equity or stir. So I'm just interested in the feminine lens from an investment perspective.
To answer that question, great question. I haven't personally, and I think it came more to it because I'm too stubborn to say I'll take the no for a no. It's just a no yet. It's not yet, right? But I think it's more about being persistent. So if you are that, I don't find that there is a discrimination. It's just you need to stand up. I mean, if you want to play in the big game, you need to play the big. Anyway, if you play low, you just get low. So
I think there's a difference between who asks in research and in many areas. I think there's a big difference in the number of women who applied for different mix. So that's my in our area. The female founder research is partly to answer your question, which I did do well earlier. Barriers to scale for female founders, the research we found, three of the key things was business investment literacy. And so female founders understand working capital, but how do I actually fund my own business, whether it's my own funding or somebody else? So this is where your program is literary. You're looking at the education piece that's needed for women in business is around investment.
And we've seen that's part of the reason why we've teamed up with a group called Women in Sports Technology out of the US, because what we've seen in the US is that there's impact investors emerging. They have a clear mandate around directing their investment into areas that previously have been, say, underserved. And so it's interesting to see that in a particular fund, for instance, out of New Jersey, 66% of their investments are now deployed women founders in sports. And that goes along with an education piece. That's where we bring in then our colleagues from WIST to actually share to your point, Stephanie, how do you access that? How do you present? And how do you get these meaningful introductions?
Thanks, Monica. And I mean, I think there's been, other important research, hasn't there, around, bias and all these challenges we can overcome. And, in terms of, the investors themselves and looking at females, female-led startups. But, if we don't see the potential in female founders, we're losing the benefits that all these ladies can bring to the table. And I think actually, Monica, I'm sure it's from a past hat that I was wearing, and you've said that women, we just see different problems, and some that maybe others don't see. because you've got that classic tale of the elephant and people touching different parts of the elephant and describing it differently depending on what you're touching. And, oh, you're touching the tail, that's very different to the ears. And then I think often, just because of the different trajectories and life experiences, in the social sector, and Martin, that goes to your point in terms of impact investors, it's often those problems that, females will look to, that could improve, our society from the lived experience. I know my grandma, she stopped working, but she was a wonderful connector in her society. She was solving problems. She was on all these committees, all these wonderful skills that you think would make a great businesswoman. But, she was not in the paid economy, but she was solving problems that she encountered. And I think, more women are in the workforce, more women are, empowered and see the opportunity as entrepreneurs, as scientists, as researchers, as, advisors, and so on. So, we have more opportunity collectively to address the important problems and then to create value and then to build our nation's prosperity, because we've got this unique opportunity to 2032. I mean, in terms of a great entrepreneurship researcher, Professor Per Davidson, who won a Lifetime Award, he talks about external enablers. And I can't see anything, grander than, what's happening with 2032 and just the wonderful, wonderful energy it's catalyzing people to come together. And, the time is right. The Matildas have shown that too. Let's come together. Let's bring, the support and the enthusiasm and, more programs like this together to help more women in sports tech to realise great things. Do we have any more questions from the audience? We maybe have one or two more. And at the back, if that's okay to...
We've had a got focus on it's how you have to sees it. Girls in the passion release moving fun. Are you interested in the panel in sport? Those could be a bigger business background, abstract ads, analytics background, and just in job market, and it's just African ladies step in. Like I was really with and offer these the best skills to acquire and want to move into tech space.
That's a great question. So for anyone that couldn't hear, so for those that are coming from a business background that want to get into sports tech and, what do you need to do? Do you need to, build on those skills, or how can you add value and realize opportunities? I think it takes many types to whether it's as, forming a business or helping a business. You've got business expertise that's relevant. On founder teams, it's often the hipster, the hacker, and the hustler. So the hustler, comes from, business, so you can add value in that context. And but I'm sure, in Kerrie's scholarships, there's, an opportunity for people with business and some quant skills to get in, to take that path if you want to help in R&D. And you've come from Martin, you have more to add there?
So the number one question that we're getting from people that come into programs, particularly the early stages, where can I find, or can you connect me to someone with that skill? So for instance, if someone has deep expertise from a sports skill set point of view, their question would be, where can I find my tech co-founder? And vice versa, if there's someone who has a particular tech skill, they'll then ask for, or how can I find that complementary person with, let's say, the market knowledge? So always think about, what is your passion? What do you believe in? And try to identify where that is useful in sport, and then start to work your way around what are people working on? What are the big problems? And who's working on solving those? And before we get into a position at some stage where someone will actually, I'm looking for this expertise. And Stephanie was talking about supply chain. So if you have a particular experience in supply chain, and organizing that across continents or things like that, there's certainly going to be one founder out there who needs that expertise at some stage.
Can I just...
Yes.
Awesome.
So as I said before, I have no idea about how defense works, and if I can give you a picture, it's like this massive spaghetti bowl that entwines, and when you eat it, it's even worse. For me, it's like you just need to be in it and speak to people and be around people, because you learn so much from people, and then suddenly that light bulb comes and you meet that particular person, or you find the chair where you fit onto it. Like my first networking event with the defense, like they're all in uniforms and high-ranking officers, and I just sat there and like, what the hell am I doing here? But it's the more you go in it, then they meet you, they learn to trust you, and then you're adding, and someone will say, you are the exact person that I need to solve this problem, and you're already in. I don't believe you have to be in sports to understand sports. You need to understand what you bring to sports to make it better. And if that is something that no one ever heard, doesn't matter. Or you don't need to be an athlete to understand athletes.
Hey, Kerrie, can I just, if you're looking to be an employee in a startup or scale up, you just got to think about your own skill set. So if it's a startup, you've got to have really, really broad skills. You've got to be a handy person to know, right? And one of the key things is you've got to make yourself useful across many things. When it starts to scale up and get larger, then you need more deep expertise for employees, not external advisors. And so when it's from a startup where it's wide, and then as it starts to scale, it gets deep, right? And so think about what is your value, and who's going to value that to get that match right.
And then network. If I can give an illustration from this week. So yesterday we had, the wonderful Sportstech Innovation, big conference day. So bringing together diversity of ecosystem players and the conversations in the room. So one woman I was talking to, introduced from someone connected to ASTN actually, said, you two have to meet. And then we met, and then it's like, you have to be introduced to this person and this person because you're passionate about business. They're scaling. They have more coming in than they can deal with. You have relevant capabilities. And look, you're using your holiday time, that kind of passion. You need to be helping. So I think also put yourself out there, immerse yourself, and opportunities come your way as well. It's a great question. So I think maybe some final points from our panellists, if you were to give some advice, thinking about women in sports tech, just a few lines, a sentence, what would it be when you're thinking about the great opportunities that we now see, but also, there is a gap and we're aiming to fix that. So you're all part of that problem solving, but what advice do you have to help more women get into sports tech?
Not to be afraid to jump in that big, scary hole and just give it a go. Worst case scenario, I put the hand up and said it wasn't for me, and I jump into another hole. Nothing can really happen. It's like we don't have a roadmap to go somewhere. You just have to start. It's the starting point, and there are wonderful people out there that want to help. I truly believe that at least 50-60% of my success came from people that just wanted to help, connect me with the people, offered me their advice, their time, and it all comes together. It's just getting started. Don't wait.
Dive in.
Yeah.
Use the swimmer's analogy. Great advice.
Well, mine's very predictable. Become data savvy. And if you can't do it, then find somebody who can.
Follow those trends that the data's pointing to. This is a big opportunity space. Great.
Yourself, thanks, Steve.
Marlon.
I think just what I've learned
Australia scooters and give it a go.
Just you.
Yes.
I didn't want to use that.
Great.
I'm not sure. I'd say keep it lean. Be as lean as you can, and go for speed. Just really be careful about the decisions that you make. Put some gateposts around those decisions, and have those make or break points, because not every idea is a good one.
Right.
And then the last thing I'd say was just ask your family for forgiveness up front.
That's great advice. Well, I would like to sincerely thank each and every one of our panellists. You've been very generous with sharing your insights, your time, and audience, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And thank you so much for joining us. And for our international guest, so Etsuko Yamada is another wonderful woman in sports and Sportstech. So she has left some materials that you can enjoy later. They are helping for those within Sportstech that want to implement good policy for sustainable development. Sport is a great vehicle for that. There's a great opportunity, and Martin, that was one of your key trends. So please pick that up and enjoy the conversation afterwards. So it's going to keep going for those that are here. We're going to enjoy some beverages and snacks and networking. So please connect, say hello, and we look forward to speaking with you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.